Syria's government's approved a draft law to end the country's state of emergency. It's also warning anti-government protesters to back down or face the consequences. The latest demonstrations broke out in the coastal city of Banyas on Tuesday. And in the last few hours, the government's removed the police chief there over his mishandling, they say, of the protests. The United States has called on Syria to stop the violence and, quote, urgently implement reforms. Well, Al Jazeera's Rula Amin is with us now from Damascus. First of all, the easing of the emergency laws, the restrictions on public assembly, etc., all designed to stop the protests. Have they managed to do so?
No, not so far, and the protest continues. But that doesn't mean that these measures won't have an effect on the ground. People are waiting to see how will these measures be translated on the ground. How will the protesters be dealt with? How political dissent will be dealt with? Because the activists we have been speaking to say, okay, it's a good step that the emergency law will be lifted in the coming few days, but will that mean that the powers of the security agencies will be curbed? That's what people want. They want to make sure that the security agencies, the different ones, won't be able to come and arrest people for expressing their opinions, for protesting, for even differencing and making their voices heard on issues that they differ with the government on. They want that right. They want the government to come out and acknowledge their right to differ with the government and to express that.
Well, tell me about the protests that are still happening, Rula. Where and how many?
Okay, in Homs, there were protests in the past few days. Today, the situation is calm but very tense. Heavy security presence. People are concerned. They don't know how will the government deal with the situation there and the developments, because according to the government, not only have there been protests in Homs and an attempt to stage a sit-in, which for the government is a red line, but they were also shooting and firing at security agents, including 5 high-ranking officers, and their bodies had been mutilated and disfigured. And for the government, that's a serious threat and an alarming threat. So people are very concerned there on how will the government deal with that. We have to remember Homs is in the center of the country, and in many ways it represents also the country. There are Muslims, Christians and Armenians living in Homs. There are the Salafists, the communists, the liberals. There are the tribal leaders and tribal connections between people, and a history of very active civil society. And what happens in Homs is an indication on how the country may be going. That's why everyone is looking at Homs. There was also a small protest in Aleppo at the university there. It seems like 100 students tried to stage a protest. It didn't take long for other students to come along and turn it into a pro-government protest. Elsewhere in the country, it seems people are preparing for Friday protest. That's the day when most of the protests take place, and that's the day when people want to make a point that they still have the right to protest.
Rula Amin, thank you. In the Syrian capital, Damascus.